What up, folks? Welcome back into another edition of the Calling It How I See It Sports podcast. Blake Terrance here with you. Really excited to be joined by David Leske here to talk some Royals. Lots to talk about tonight. And, I always prefer in the marathon that is a baseball season to start with macro topics so we don't get too caught up in the micro, but we will cover some of the trends we've been seeing lately. So stick with us and feel free to jump into the chat room anytime. So, David, appreciate you coming on, man. I always think it's the most beneficial to take some time after a trade deadline, especially if your team was fairly active, to give yourself some time and give the baseball some time, just to work through the events that'll happen that'll inform your opinions. And so far, I think the Royals have been pretty well vindicated. And probably the biggest reason is, right around the time they started adding pitching, Chris Bubich was just going on the injured list and stuff. And it really seems like, Bailey Falter's been a disappointment, but Ryan Bergert's really stepped up. The guys that have filled the part-time void in the outfield, Yastrzemski and Grichuk, have been good. It really seems like they threaded the needle well in terms of upgrading this current team and also for the future.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Bailey Falter. Yes, he had a bad start. I don't think he was that bad on Monday. He gave up a home run on the first, and that happens.
Mm-hmm.
He did only go 4 innings, but he gave up the 2 runs, and it's I understand that he's probably the lowest ceiling of any pitcher that was brought in, but I don't think he was bad in his first start. He wasn't terrible in his second start. Now he's going to the bullpen. You didn't mention Adam Frazier, who is hitting 323. Well, they got him at the All-Star break, and so it's funny because it's 2 weeks before the deadline, so it doesn't feel like a deadline move.
Right,
but it is. I think they did a good job. I think that what I think happened is they went from going into spring training thinking they had 8 starters with more on the horizon in the minors to getting to a point in July where they had 3 starters. And I think JJ Piccolo basically was like, yeah, never again. We're not doing this. We're going to get as many starters as we can that have as much team control as we can. And we are going to have depth going into next season. And also we have to finish this season. So let's go out and get some guys who can pitch. And it helps that they're getting Michael Lorenzen back. He's going to start on Saturday. Cole Reagans, I mean, I can't predict he's going to take the mound again until we see him in a rehab assignment at the very least, but he started throwing again. So they're starting to get healthier and have that depth. And then you look ahead to next season and it's back to 8 starters, but that's without including Alec Marsh or Kyle Wright, who those are your top depth starters with the injury history now. Marsh didn't really have the injury history before, but now he has it. That's a problem. When they're your 9th and 10th starters, okay, now you're starting to cook. And so I think that there's a lot to like about that aspect of it. And truly, what did they give up again? Not to rehash everything a couple weeks later, but they gave up Freddie Fermin, who's doing really well in San Diego, and I hope he continues to do really well. I don't think. Yeah, I would probably be thriving there too more than I am here. But he's a backup catcher ultimately, and again, he's had a great run with San Diego since he got there, and I really hope he continues it. I hope that we look back on that trade and go, wow, Ryan Bergert is really good, and Freddie Fermin had a really good run in San Diego. Both teams benefited. I would love to see Fermin become a starting catcher. We've seen what happens though when he plays every day, and the bat falls off. So. And catching is the one area in the organization they have big time depth. The pitching is getting there, honestly, but organizationally they've got a ton of catchers. And trading Fermin to get 2 rotation solutions, one that could be like a 3. I think Berger could be a 3-starter long term, and another in Steven Kolick, who, and I don't know what his ceiling is. I think he's probably more of a 4 or 5. But look, they went out and they spent $7 million on a 5 in Michael Lorenzen.
Yeah,
if you don't have to spend $7 million on a number 5 starter. That's money that can go to a bat. That's money that can go to a bullpen, whoever,
absolutely.
Wherever.
And if
so, really valuable
if he's
return.
If it doesn't work out in that capacity and they want to maximize his stuff more, hey, if he allows you to not have to spend money to bring John Schreiber back, that's still a worthwhile return on it too.
For sure.
So, I didn't put this down, but you brought it up, and of course it's a theme of why they did what they did. So let's talk about that for a second. The teams, it's primarily small market teams like, the Rays and the Brewers are the teams that come most to mind when you talk about teams. The Royals are look like they're trying to follow the path of. But the whole sport has this emphasis on pitching now that is more quantity, or I'm sorry, more quality over quantity. They don't care about preserving bullets for later in the game in a micro sense, or in a macro sense, they don't seem terribly worried about the increased injury risk by the max effort style of pitching today. So, regardless of what you and I think, that's the way it is now. But did the Royals just kind of like they have with their performance with runners in scoring position, like you expect some regression, but not complete like first to worst kind of regression? Is that sort of what's happened to their health, or do you have some concerns that they could be starting to follow that path that we're talking about because they are like revamping their pitching development and styles?
I mean, I don't think that's what's happening, because what's interesting about the way the Royals have gone after and targeted pitching is they are looking for. I mean, you look at guys like Lugo and Waka and Ryan Berger, another name that we just mentioned him, Kolek. These guys aren't. They're not stuff. Well, Berger's
But they're
got.
not extreme
like, they all have good
velocity
stuff.
guys.
That's not fair to say. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Right, they're not the guys who are throwing 98 with ridiculous frisbee sliders that are hard on your elbow and all that. And I think a lot of what the Royals have done is they've kind of zigged when everybody else is zagging, but not in a way that makes you think they're incompetent. And it's okay. You're going to go after these guys who will give you 120 great innings. We're going to go after the guy who will give us 190 good innings.
Mm-hmm.
And we think that's going to be better. The problem is it's kind of blown up in their face. The one guy who is the velocity guy, Cole Reagan's hurt. Chris Bubich, not a velocity guy. He did add a slider, and that he ended up having Tommy John right after. I don't know if that's a related pitch to injury, but it hurt shoulder. Michael Lorenzen had an oblique-ish. I think it was an oblique.
Yeah.
So that's one of the. Seth Lugo had a finger injury. That's not a thing you worry about too much. So maybe it's just that it's weird they had two guys who had shoulder injuries.
There, yeah.
And Steven Cruz also, but he's a stuff guy. So a reliever, which is different. You're not trying to get 190 innings from a reliever,
right?
But I think that they actually do target. They target pitchers a little bit differently, and I think they do that because two reasons. One, they feel like they have to because the stuff guys cost more. Home run costs, stuff costs. But two, I think that they really believe in Brian Sweeney, Zach Bowe, Mitch Stetter, all the pitching guys to help make average pitchers above average pitchers good pitchers great pitchers elite. I think they really believe and they have that ability to stair step those guys. And so you can go after the guys who maybe aren't going to be as expensive. And like that's how they got Michael Waka for what ended up being 1 year and 16 million, and Seth Lugo for originally what was 2 years and 30 million. When those guys have produced far more than that to this point in there. I mean, Seth Lugo produced that last year alone. Waka obviously got the next contract. Seth Lugo got the next contract. We'll talk about that. But I think that's their thought process, and it obviously the injury issues have been a problem this year, but also, the results are still there. I mean, they've had a little bit of a downturn, but they weren't going to pitch to that level all season long. But I mean, they're still sitting, what are they, fourth in baseball in the ERA coming into today? I imagine that hasn't changed. They're starting pitching. When I looked earlier, I think they were also fourth in ERA. Bullpen was like 9th or 10th, maybe 11th, somewhere in that range. But so they're very clearly a top, I don't know, if depending on how you weigh starters and relievers, a top 7 pitching staff this year, even with the injuries. So it's clearly working.
You wouldn't be too concerned about pitcher injuries. This seems more to you like luck evening out from last year.
I think so. Obviously, don't know. I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
I rarely even go to the doctor. I probably should go more, but yeah, it doesn't feel like it's anything systemic necessarily. But if it happens again next year, you go, okay, well, 1 year was good and the next 2 were bad. That's the overriding trend. So we'll see. But in my mind, I don't think it's there yet.
I'm gonna go a little out of order here, but you brought up Seth Lugo and his finger injury. I kind of have a nagging worry that we might see something similar. Because it's a fine line we walk. Obviously, like you never want to even suggest that a team is quote unquote faking anything, because that is just poor integrity of the game, and B, like it's not like you get away with that. Like I believe, didn't the Yankees a year or two ago have somebody get in trouble for actually doing that?
No, it was
Like
the Mets. It was Billy
Mets.
Epler, and yeah, he got did he get suspended or he just
Yeah.
got he resigned over it. I'm not sure if he got suspended. I have to look that up, but yeah, faking injuries.
That, but I do
They
worry
cracked
that
down
like
on
the
that,
way
and yeah,
Lugo's been
the
pitching, I don't want
reality.
to, and the fact he's already had a minor injury and all, the fact that they now are going to be thinking about preserving him for the next 2 years, like I wouldn't be shocked if we just start to say, hey, his finger's acting up again. And I mean, you even hear Rex Hudler, like a guy whose opinion, whatever you think about his broadcasting, I trust his, judgment when it comes to like if he sees something, I tend to listen a bit to that, and he's pretty convinced Lugo's looking fatigued. I wouldn't be shocked if something like that's coming.
Maybe I'll give a little inside the crown pitch right now. I am in the process and getting closer to done writing about Lugo's issues. So the without giving too much away because that's bad business, right? I think it's mechanical to me. The question that I have, mechanical can be because of an injury.
Right.
So, and I mentioned this morning on Kaufman Corner that my opinion, if he is hurt seriously, if there is a serious injury, the training staff needs to be fired. And I don't say that lightly because he just signed a big extension like 2.5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Which
That's
means
bad.
that triggered a physical. And it's totally anecdotal, but if he had a physical 2.5 weeks ago and has a serious injury today, training staff's got to go. I don't think that's the case because they're a good training staff.
Yeah.
So I
Let's
want to
be
make
clear.
that clear
You
that I'm
don't
not
blow out
saying,
your
the
like
training
Tommy
staff screwed up
John.
badly.
You don't go from 0 to 100. Like we
Right.
know how that process works.
Exactly. And so if there was an issue 2.5 weeks ago, if there's issue today, they would have seen a serious issue. That's not to say that his finger couldn't be bothering him or he's not, his hamstring's a little sore. But and I mentioned this on the podcast this morning, so I don't this isn't giving too much away, but he's releasing the ball a little earlier. His extension or a little bit farther away from the plate. And what's happening is the ball is tailing on him. And that you watch, you're watching the games, you go, it seems like everything's going arm side, right? Everything's going fastball at least is going arm side. The numbers bear that out. It's exactly what's happening. His command has been bad. And that generally means mechanics. But again, mechanics can be due to some sort of injury. The thing that I come back to, he was struggling before he got the contract, which is why I'm not terribly worried about a long-term injury. Because he had the bad start against the Marlins to start the second half. I think he started against the Cubs. No, he had to start between that. Was
really,
against the Braves that he wasn't very
the
good
outlier
too?
has been was it against the Blue Jays? He pitched well, I think, the very first start after.
So he was okay against. I'm looking at his game logs now. So since the break, he's given up 5 runs on 8 hits to the Marlins, 2 runs on 4 hits to the Cubs in 6 innings. That was a good start. 3 runs on 7 hits in 5 2/3 against the Braves. He ran to a wall in the 6th. That was that game. And then 2 runs on 4 hits, but only 4 2/3 against the Blue Jays. And then back-to-back 7 runs against the Twins on Friday.
I mean, the
and
last
then against
2
the
have
Nationals.
been like utter stinkers. Yeah,
absolutely brutal starts. The ones before, like the Blue Jays start 2 runs on 4 hits. He did walk 4, and that's the other thing. He's walked since the Cubs game. So he didn't walk anybody against the Marlins out of the break. Walked 2 against the Cubs. Then it's 4-4, 2 and 4, but it's only in 18 1/3 innings. So 14 walks and 11 strikeouts in 18 1/3 innings. That's bad. And I think the contract, I'm trying to remember, did he sign that? He signed it after the Brave start, didn't he? No, it wasn't. It was before the Brave start. So that is all since the contract. But he was struggling before that. I mean, the Marlins start was bad. The Cubs start was solid, but missing back things too. So I think that he had a really good run coming into the break. So he came back from the finger injury. I think he should have had a rehab start, struggled. But then from the start after that, which was against the White Sox to the break, 41 innings, 43 strikeouts, 14 walks, 1.54 ERA. Like he was really good. And coming out of the break, he hasn't been as good, which, you look at that 10 days between, I guess 9 days off. He pitched on July 8th and July 18th. You can develop a mechanical issue in that time. I don't think and like I said, I'm writing about it for tomorrow. I don't have it all done, which is part of why I don't want to tell you everything because I may be wrong. sometimes when I write things, I don't know what the conclusion is going to be. I think
Yeah,
that's the best way to
yeah,
write things, honestly.
yeah.
So yeah, I think that there's a chance it's a small injury. But whatever is causing
Right.
a mechanical issue, I think it ultimately is a
Let's talk a little
mechanical
bit
issue.
about the state of the offense. I still struggle to understand how a team that just, saw immediate results when they brought in a new regime on the pitching side of things. And we've seen, not that delayed of a trickle down effect throughout the whole organization. Like you talked about, like pitching starting to get to catching where you're like, well, you need X, you need a whole outfield basically. You got hella pitching, and teams love pitching. Like, how did they, did they run out of bandwidth? Did they run out of resources? I mean, I know I'm being a little flippant, and Alex Zumwalt was highly regarded, and the hitting up and down the organization is in the hands of a lot of people, but I'm still just struggling to understand how it's like the hitting, forgot to get on the train with the rest of the organization to.
Yeah, I think the answer is kind of similar to like the MJ Melendez conversation, because I remember back in spring training, he had the new swing and all that, and people go, "Why did it take him this long?" Well, let's look at the timeline. He comes up in 2022. He's league average as a rookie. You're not going to change anything, truly. I mean, you just aren't. 2023, terrible first half, but he was really good in the second half. So maybe he figured something out. And then he struggled in 2024 and changed something. It finally, the way people talk about MJ Melendez was as if he'd been
Like it was
like
an
the worst
Adalberto
player and worst hitter
Mondesi
in
thing
baseball for
where like
3
it was
years and
all
took that
hype,
long to
no
change.
results at all, basically. Yeah.
Right. And there were results.
Right.
And so I totally understand. And so you look at the Royals offense over the years and you go, okay, I sort of get this. Like they came in,
22 was
when did they
Ainsworth
come in? Was
last
that
year.
22? When was that the
I
year
think
that
you're
they
right. Yeah,
fired
because
Terry Bradshaw before?
Moore fired Bradshaw, and then Eldred went with Moore and Matheny.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Well, Moore was gone before that. JJ
Yeah.
was in charge by then because Moore was gone before the end of the year. But yeah, so it was
Right.
2022. Zumwalt and those guys take over. I don't think you can judge anybody on the 2022 roster.
Right.
Let's unfortunately. So then you start to 2023, same thing. I feel like you have a really difficult time. And there were some interesting players in 2023. That you had Vinny Pasquantino started off the year really well. Then he got hurt. MJ Melendez had a really good second half. Going back to MJ Melendez, Bobby Witt took off in 2023. Miguel Garcia came up and looked okay. Freddie Fermin had a solid season in his role. I'm looking at the numbers right now. They got a 105 weighted runs created plus out of Edward Olivares, who has done nothing since then and became kind of a fan favorite. And so I think you look at that and you go, okay, well, they give him a shot, right? And then last year it was unsustainable. Clearly, it was runners in scoring position hitting, but they were fifth in baseball in runs scored the day that Pasquantino got hurt. And so you go, okay, well, why? It's hard to make that change. I'm not saying that they were right to not make that change, but it's difficult to do it. And the other thing, I wrote about this at the end of the year. I'd forgotten about this, but Baseball America looks at a lot of the underlying metrics at the end of the season in farm systems. The Royals system offensively was ranked really well in like hard hit rate, chase rate, batting plus, I think is what they called it, that just like looked at everything overall. The system looked really good. And then this year everything is tanked basically. And so I think that's why it hasn't happened. Long answer to get there. But I think that's why you haven't seen it. And now I think you're looking, and organizationally there's a problem. And I would be very surprised if we don't see, I don't know if it'll be the same, everybody out, new people in idea, but because I think Alex Zumwalt does have a lot of value to the organization. Maybe it's not his hitting coach. Maybe he goes back to the role he was in before that, where he was working in the system or in the front office or something. I think there is, if he wants that, I think that's what's going to happen. What I think is interesting is I just pulled up the numbers for the second half. The Royals, by weighted runs created plus, are tied for ninth best in baseball since the break, at least coming into today. So you wonder, okay, is that going to be the excuse they don't do something? I hope not. They're fourth in runs. By the way, coming into today, the Brewers and Blue Jays are top in runs. And that makes sense. Partially because the Blue Jays scored, I think, 177 runs in Colorado in 3 games.
Something like that.
Third in baseball, the White Sox. Fourth in baseball, the Royals. Seventh in baseball, the Padres, which is not surprising except for the fact that they were not a good offense before the break. Ninth, the Guardians. Yeah. Like, I don't know what's going on in baseball.
It's weird.
It's weird. But to that point, the Royals they're hitting better, at least in the second half. And in a lot of ways, I hope it doesn't change anything. The other side of that, though, they are walking more. Like, it's a
Yeah,
different
they are.
approach lately,
Mhm.
and I wonder, like, they have an 8.8% walk rate since the break, but if you go back, they didn't early on to start the second half, they were whatever against the Marlins and the Cubs, starting with that Cleveland series. So, you go back to I guess the first 2 games were the doubleheader. So you go back to July 26th. The Royals have the
Yeah,
fifth
off
best
days are
walk or
weird,
coming
yeah.
into today.
Thursdays,
I
Mondays
the
and
game
Thursdays are weird.
games they are. But the fifth best walk rate in baseball. In since July 20th, we all, they mentioned the stat about 6 plus walks in 4 straight games the other day, but they've since that started, they've walked 5 times once, 7 times once, 5 times, then 8, 6, 6, 6 over the last 3 games. This is really weird. I noticed this the other day or yesterday after the game. They walked and struck out exactly 6 times in all 3 games against the Nationals. Just kind of
Huh.
weird.
Yeah,
But
yeah. No, I mean, I like
those
I'm
are the
not as
sort of things that I
sophisticated with
nerd
the
out on. And
websites, and they're not always as
that's true.
accessible to the screen readers I use. But it's I love nerding out over this stuff too. And I'm half tempted to say that sounds like, which sort of lines up, that sounds like they've maybe faced inferior pitching over that time span. But number one, there's been some good ones sprinkled in there over that long, and number two, we've seen them not draw walks against some pretty crappy pitchers. Cal
And seen
Quantrill's
him we
eighth
should not
against.
do much against some pretty crappy pitchers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and he's one of the few who have actually shut them down since the break.
Yep, yep.
The other thing that I keep looking at, I've been tracking this, and I think it's up. I'm going to count it real quick. I think it's up to 12 times that they've scored 7 or more runs since the break, and they did it 14 times before the break. So
Hmm.
I don't. I would feel that where I'm having a really hard time grasping
Right.
is they're not hitting better with runners in scoring position. I mean, clearly, but they're doing things that good offensive teams do. They're walking and they're hitting home runs, and that's the sort of thing that you feel maybe it's sustainable. Like maybe they're still not striking out. They have since the break they have 35 home runs, which I mean I think they had 12 in the first half. I don't look that up. I might be off on that, but their 35 home runs are tied for 6th in baseball coming into today since the break. That's not just they're hitting a few more home runs. No, they're hitting a lot of home runs. They're isolated. Their isolated slugging percentage, which is slugging percentage minus batting average, which really shows the value of extra base hits.
Mm-hmm.
5th
Yep.
in baseball. Like they're getting extra base hits. I mean they're kind of doing things like a modern offense, which I don't
And
fully
it's
understand
like
because I
cruelly
don't know that
ironic
we've ever
that
seen that in Kansas City.
because like last year they weren't as much doing those things, but their performance in clutch situations made up for it. Now, you're talking about all these positive trends, and yet their, worst first to worst thing they've done in that category is basically undone all that. Like you could have missed a lot of what you just said there. Now, I'm gonna this is why we have you on, because you bring in these like second layer trends that could give us some optimism. But I'm gonna pour a little cold water on you here and say maybe they have been playing a bit more like a modern offense. It's maybe gives you some hope that they're a contender. But I'll put out there are a few things that contenders don't do. They don't get picked off the bases every game.
Yeah.
They don't turn singles into triples, and they can put bunts down when it really matters, and then and yet then they can bunt for a hit when they're now I'm just ranting because it annoys the hell out of me. But like there's what I'm really saying is, you on other podcasts, me on here, everybody's like kind of had this like back and forth, either or debate on like, is it the coaching, is it Alex Zumwalt and everybody else, or do they just not have enough good hitters? And I'm kind of starting to wonder if it's both, because clearly they still have a few holes to fill in the lineup. But somebody just when I was discoursing on here a couple days ago made a really good point there, that like you can make up for a shortfall of talent a lot better than this team is. And I also just come back to like, because they were ahead of schedule last year, they've set that bar for themselves. And true playoff contenders don't play baseball that way. So like, where do you have optimism that like I don't worry about those things in 1 or 2 games. But when I've seen them over 120, that tells me that's exactly what this team is. And so to say, like, well, they just got to clean that up, okay, starting now, I guess. Like, what gives you optimism that could happen?
Well, a couple of
Anything?
things. One, we talk about the base running, and I do not want to. I want to make this very clear. The base running has not been good for the entirety of the season. It has been bad. Okay, I've said that, but now I want to point out something, and there I believe, and I'll tell you why I feel like I'm a little bit vindicated in this belief in a second, but I believe that 85% of the base running issues that we've seen this season have come from not believing in the offense and trying to make things happen because they didn't think the offense would be able to come through and score runs. And the reason I say that is they have made 29 outs on the bases. Now, this does not include pickoffs, caught stealings, or force plays, which I don't know why anybody would think that an out on the bases would be a force play. That should never be even come into mind. So doesn't include pickoffs or caught stealings. That's the important thing. But 29th, that means there are I think it's 6 teams that have fewer.
Okay, I'm sorry to cut you off, but real quick, let's just
6.
clarify. If it's not talking about like the pitcher or catcher picking them off on the bases, we're talking about things in live plays, right? Like so, like getting thrown out,
Yes.
trying to go first to third or first to home on a
Yes.
double. Okay.
100%. Attempting to reach another base, doubled off on a line drive,
Okay. Yeah.
trying to advance on a wild pitch or pass ball will also count.
Okay.
That. Where they rank highly, they've been picked off more than anybody, and they've been caught stealing 4th most, I want to say. So those two things. First of all, we want to talk about good teams, bad teams. The caught stealing leaders, Brewers have the most. The Rays have the second most. Pickoffs, Royals are at the top. The Rays are second. Now the Rays are under 500.
It's not the
so I
Rockies
think
and White Sox is your point.
Do we
right.
want to say that they are a good? Well, the Rockies are third, but still, the point being that I don't think I don't think it's a completely fair blanket statement to make that good teams don't do those things. But I think what you're and now let me give you my vindication for this thought. So Fangraphs has a stat: base running runs. It's just base running, but it's base running runs above average that include stolen bases and caught stealings and all that. For the season, the Royals came in today. I'll keep saying that. 18th in baseball, -2 runs for the season. Since the break, when they've been hitting, they have the second best. They're 3.2 since the break. And so I look at that and I'm going, okay, so I thought that they were poor on the bases because they were trying to make things happen because the offense, quite frankly, sucked. And now the offense is hitting and they are the second best base running team by this metric in baseball. And so it makes me think, I think I was right. And the reality is, let's get philosophical. We all look for ways to think that we were right. So I'm not saying that I am right.
It does
but
lend itself.
But you think
this does to that thought that now that they're scoring, the base running is better because they're not trying to do too much. Now you'll still see some stupid things happen because teams make out on the bases. Like it doesn't matter. It's going to happen. You're going to get caught stealing. But I haven't actually looked at the Royals caught stealing numbers since the break. But I don't feel like there have been many off the top of my head. I'm going to pull it up right now. But I agree that good teams don't do silly things. I think that some of the fundamental
you wouldn't be talking about it if
been
they
a little
could
bit
hit worth
overblown.
crap, basically. Like
right. Also, they are 24 for 26 in stolen bases.
Bobby, like everybody does seem to be getting there just in time lately. That catches that tracks with when you watch the games. So I guess the reason I still feel not completely satisfied with that explanation is that I still see like maybe it's for me it's like maybe I should just like I try to avoid doing this honestly in analysis because it can come off like A, overly simplistic, and B, like personal, which I never want to be. But I'm starting to think it's like maybe it's just like certain guys, whether it's like dragging those stats down or, maybe guys like Tolbert being Terrance score base stealer covers them up a little bit. Like, do you still like when I think about Jonathan India in the context of as a Royals player, like he's been fine offensively. So like I'm not like putting that down. But like, is it unfair for the first things I think about being him? Like, oh boy, where are they gonna put him defensively to do something goofy today, or like what bonehead base running thing is he gonna do? Like, or John Rave.
Mm-hmm.
Is it unfair for me to be like, oh God, like he's on first, he's up to bat, or like the ball's coming at him. What's about to happen? You know what I'm
No, I
saying?
mean,
Like,
I was at the game the other night, and I think it might have been the first batter hit a ground ball to India, and I'm not clapping for an out until that out is recorded. Like, I don't know. He might throw it a second with nobody on base, thinking he's going to start turning a double play. I feel like there are times with India that I want to be like, is this your first time? Do you know the
are
game?
you
Or
sure
are
that was a
you, did
protein
you wander
brownie
on
you
this
ate before
field?
the game, bro?
Right. It's so funny.
Like,
Exactly. And I hate to say it, but he's given us reason for that. And I mean, it's not like he made the big error in Miami in that last game that turned a 7-0 win into a 7-4 nail biter. I maintain in Boston that if he hadn't gone out to high five a fan in right field, he wouldn't have gotten in Grichuk's way and would have caught that ball. There are a lot of I just don't know what he's doing on the field. John Rave, I think, is a little bit different. First of all, I
everyone
don't think
told
John
us
Rave
that.
is
You and I
a
said that
legitimate big
like
league player.
whenever
I
anybody
don't.
did the whole what's going on, they got all these issues in the outfield. Why are they not calling up John Rave? And I'm like, hey, maybe you should at least ask all 29 other teams why they didn't draft him in the Rule 5 draft twice.
Yes, 100%. Now, I say that, I'm looking at the stats right now since the break. 245, 351, 449.
This team,
That plays.
Rangers really can't be choosers.
He actually is the third best way
That's
to, honestly, 122 way to run created plus. You take that. The Royals leaderboard since the break is weird. It's Michael Garcia, okay, first. Kyle Isbell second. John Rave third. Salvi fourth. Bobby fifth. Adam Frazier
has definitely taken a step forward this year. I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on that because he always will be just kind of what he is, but what he is a little better this year.
He's looked solid. But yeah, I mean, I think that the other thing, and this may get philosophical too, we don't remember. Oh, he went first to third on a single. Cool. We don't think about it. I mean, we remember like Michael Garcia on what day was that? Was that Tuesday that he went first to third on the ground out? We'll remember that. That was cool.
Yeah.
But like you don't remember first third on a single, but you remember getting thrown out at third, trying to go first to third. It's I don't know if you're a poker player, you don't remember the hands that you won that you sucked out on somebody. You do remember the hands that you lost that you got sucked out on. And so I think that's part of it. And it also doesn't help that they spent the majority of the first 90, 95 games looking like they all are playing baseball for the first time. So I think that is part of the perception there. I find the base running conversation fascinating because like I said, I really do believe that most of the problems were from trying to do too much and doing it poorly. And since the offense has been better, the numbers are better, and so that at least tracks. And again, like I said, we all try to make ourselves right.
There you go.
So that makes me feel right. So I'm going to go with it.
Do you again, it doesn't have to be fire X guy. I'm not even 100% sure who it is. Like, Vance Wilson is of course, the guy that in live action influences base running because he makes the hold or go calls. But don't they have somebody else designated as the actual base running instructor? Point being, I'm not really trying to go after that guy. I'm just saying do you see whether it's improvement on the struggles we've been talking about or just I think generally speaking we can all agree that it does seem like maybe the Royals haven't been, again, maybe not bottom of the league, but not as good as they could be in certain base running areas. Bobby's been better, and I think he has made strides in his base stealing, but last year he objectively there was a huge gap in between his skill and effectiveness as a base stealer, those sorts of things. Do you think they could stand some tweaking or some additions or something when it comes to base running coaching?
Well, I mean, so Damon Hollins is the base running coach.
Okay, that's the first base coach.
Learned from Rusty, all that, took over everything from Rusty. He's been doing it since 2022. Looking at I made the joke earlier this year that the Royals really need to fire 2025 Damon Hollins and hire 2024 Damon Hollins. The Royals, going with that number from Fangraphs, and again, this is one number. There are other metrics to look at, but this is the easiest one. 8.9 runs in 2023, 8.9 runs in 2024, -2 in 2025. What changed? Part of it is they're not as fast. Truly, I mean, look at the Vinny Pasquantino, Salvador Perez. They're adding like Mike Yastrzemski is not fast. Randall Grichuk is not fast. Jonathan India is not a good base runner. He's never been a good base runner. I can't blame Damon Hollins for that. Kyle Isbell has never been a burner. He hasn't lost even a half step, but he's a little slower than he was last year. Like they're not a fast team. I think that's part of it. And I think sometimes they try to play like a fast team. They have some fast players, but they're not a fast team. Yes, I think that you should always be striving to improve and be better. But I also think it's fair to say this coaching staff, this base running staff did a really good job the last 2 years. Why are they different this year? And I'm not saying that they're not worthy of blame. I just think that it's probably fair to at least recognize that they were pretty good before. Might not be as like fire the coach and it's good to go. I think they might just need to change kind of the plan because this team is not, like I said, as fast.
Let's wrap up,
maybe they
kind of
like
tying all this together. We're talking to David Leske of Inside the Crown and Kaufman Corner here on the Calling It How You See It Sports podcast. I think what all this comes back to for me in terms of like the base running or the other stuff that I splashed reality or splashed cold water on, whatever, like for me, it's like talking about it specifically from the standpoint of what they can do over these last quarter of the season. Basically, with the 40 games, we got 41 to go to the end of the season. So what do you think, like, does the thing that doesn't give me optimism and like why I tend to land on that side is because basically what they need to do, like to put it in a nutshell over these next 41 games, is to get on the hottest streak they've had all year. Like not something ridiculous, not something unattainable, not even like 15 out of 20. Like that became kind of a famous hot streak mantra in the Dayton Moore era. They don't need to be quite that hot, but they've got to win like 23 to 25 of the remaining 41 games in, preferably, well, most likely by beating up on teams like the White Sox that they got coming up. However they get there, do you see this team with all these injury concerns and all these quirks as capable or likely of getting on that hot of a streak just because it's the time it's most needed?
No, I mean, I wouldn't predict it. I don't think you can. Because
I was going to say, was it 16 of 18? I couldn't remember if it was that.
I mean, they did go 16-2. Yeah, it was. And I think this has changed with the Brewers. If one of my favorite stats for this season is that, there might be 3 now, but for a long time, there were 2 teams that went a 16-2 stretch this year, and they are both under 500 right now, which is wild. It's the Royals and Twins. I think the Brewers have now done it. So, I mean, they're 51-16 in their last 70 or 67 games. So they've probably done it at some point. But yeah, I mean, look, you're right. You probably 5 to me is the lowest number because they have to be 1 game better than the Yankees at the very least. If the Yankees are the third wild card because they lost the season series. So that's 25 more wins. That's 25-16. The reality is it's probably 26-15, maybe 27-14. And it's a tough road. Where they benefit, they are 2 teams between them and the Yankees or the Rangers and the Guardians. They play each of them 4 times. So they don't have to worry about, we won. What are they going to do? No, if they win, yes, if they win, the other team loses. That's right. So that helps them. Of course, they are 4-game series, or you don't sweep those very often. A, B, they're ahead of them because they're probably comparable or better. So those are tough series. And the Cleveland one is in Cleveland, which they took 3 or 4 last year in Cleveland. That was the series they got back to first place in the end of August, if you remember. So they have a history there. But yes, that's tough. You look at the schedule. They've got 6 against the White Sox. The White Sox are playing better. They're not good, but they're better. They've got 6 against the Angels. The Angels, they're 6-0 against the Dodgers this year, which is wild and kind of bad against everybody else. So I don't know. The Twins,
the series too.
They're better than we thought they'd be after the deadline. They've got 3. Yeah, they lost in Minnesota where they struggle. So, and then where I have the hope, and a lot of this relies on, interestingly enough, the Blue Jays being like way ahead of the other teams, which I don't know will happen. But you go into that game, the last 9 games of the year are at home for 3 against the Blue Jays, and then they go to Anaheim and to Sacramento.
They're playing the Kings?
If the Blue Jays have clinched, which they're playing. The nomadic A's.
Yeah.
But if the Blue Jays have clinched at that point, that could be a series. I haven't even thought about this until this morning, but that could be a series where they make up some games. And then those last 6 against the Angels and A's, it's a West Coast trip, so it's always tough. Especially, I feel like the Royals struggle on the West Coast a lot. But if the Angels and A's are like toast, which they probably will be by then, that could be a 9-game stretch where they could go 8-1. A lot of ifs there. The A's are going to be toast. I don't know what that's going to look like, but the Angels might not be. The Blue Jays probably won't have clinched, so makes it tougher. But you've got to clean up. You have to go 5-1 that last week. You've probably got to go 5-1 against the White Sox. You probably need to win 2 of 3 from the Angels. Okay, that's 12-3. You still, if you need 25 wins, you still need 13 more wins against 4 in Cleveland, 4 against Texas, 3 against the Phillies, 3 against the Mariners, 6 against the Tigers, who I don't know if they're good or not anymore, but you've got to do some damage. And it's possible. And I mentioned this on Kaufman Corner this morning too. If we're talking about this, that the Royals have 2 wild cards in that most teams can't add a pitcher the caliber of Cole Reagans and a hitter with the power potential of Jack Caglione. And
True.
That is the one spot that you look at them and go, okay, if Cole Reagans can come back healthy, first of all, he's still got 3.5 weeks.
That close.
I mean, he's thrown one bullpen.
Yeah,
he's not right. So I think the earliest you're getting him back is like September 10th, maybe. I don't know, but still, I mean, you could get back if he comes back on September 10th.
Probably at least of those against
4 starts from him.
Terrible teams, like you were talking about at the end of the schedule.
Yeah, for sure. And so that's helpful. And Jack Caglione.
Right. Yeah, you are kind of betting on him being.
He was not a big league hitter.
Hasn't been yet in that scenario, but what else do you have?
Right.
Yeah,
it's possible. There's no other way to add talent anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
which they already got him. Basically,
you're getting Tommy Pham on those claims. Like, you're right. You're not adding impact talent, but the Royals have impact talent they can add, which is helpful. I don't think it'll happen. You look ahead. I don't know that they have to sweep the White Sox, but I think they've got to win 5 of 7 in these last 7 games of the homestand. It gets a lot easier if you do sweep the White Sox. I mean, yeah, it would have been a lot easier if they had swept the Nationals. It would have been a lot easier if they had won on Sunday against the Twins. Would have been a lot easier if they had won that second game. I was going to
close out with this right here, and I was going to say I'm sorry for doing this because it's terrible analysis and it's revisionist and it's baseball and you don't do that. But hey, you started it, so I'm going to finish it. Talking about the A's thing. And are those teams going to be toast? And we know toasted teams. The last role that a team that is kind of cooked and done for the year can play as a spoiler. Then they rot, and then they ruin a good team's good year when somebody has a bad. You know what I'm saying? So we'll do a little more revisionist history of there. Don't get swept by the damn A's at home. Yes, and how much easier is this path? We can do this all night.
100. I mean, look, you can do this all for the whole. They went to extra innings on opening day and lost. Win that game and it's different. They lost 1-0 to the Cardinals in May. Win that game and it's different.
Yeah.
I mean, they lost that game against the Twins in the week later that Daniel Lynch blew up in the 9th inning. Win that game and you're feeling better. Win the game against the Tigers, you lost 1-0. I mean, I can probably find. Well, I don't know about 20. I bet 10. There are 8 games from the first half that I think the second half Royals would win, which is is encouraging because they are the second half Royals because they're scoring runs. It's not 1-0 and you go, well, I think this game is over at least. And that's a little bit of a difference right now. But I think if you put this offense against the A's in June, they're winning at least 2 of those games and they lost all 3. And so that's encouraging. But I mean, it's 100% true. You don't lose 2 or 3 to the White Sox. Don't get swept by the A's. Don't lose opening day. Don't lose that game against the Mets. They were up 3-1 after the Tyler Tolbert terrible replay review, and then Bobby Witt homer, and then you lost 8-3. Don't lose that game. Don't lose the game against the Marlins. You were up 7-5 in the 10th and gave up 3. Don't lose those games. Yep. And those are the games they didn't lose last year. So can they get on that track? Maybe, but to me, even then, in 41 games, the calendar's your enemy, and I think that right now, if you ask me to predict their final record, I'd say 82
I said
and
84
80.
and 78 before the
And
season,
that's
and
not going to make the playoffs. Probably not. No, I mean, because the Yankees would have to have 83 wins for that to happen.
Yeah.
As poorly as they're playing, I think they're probably going to get to 84, 85 wins. So yeah, it's an uphill battle. But one quick thing, I know we've gone a long time, but I mentioned this again today on the podcast. I've written it a lot. I think it's really important for us as followers and fans of the Royals to recognize that being rightfully upset about a team hovering around 500 and in the race is pretty cool.
That's
like, I'm not saying
progress.
that it's great that they're 60 and 61. I don't want to praise that, but the fact that being 60 and 61 isn't good enough is a really cool spot to be in, because 2 years ago they didn't ever get to 60 wins. And now with 41 games to go, we're like, whoa, this team is bad. No, that team was bad. So I think it's really important as fans to take that perspective of, hey,
well,
yes, this isn't good enough,
this
but it's really cool
that
this isn't good enough.
What if the Royals had, I won't even try to go too detailed or too many qualifiers. What if the Royals had the exact year they're having this year in 2024, and then had last year happening right now? We would be riding a high. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Everything would be going perfect. It's hard to say, I guess, because who knows? This team could still do something insane and finish with 73 or 88 wins, I guess. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if, let's say they do what you and I are saying, 81 to 85 range and not quite good enough, they did that last year, and then it goes up to 86, sneak into the playoffs, win a series this year. Everything's, well, we're still talking about the outfield and stuff, but in terms of the progress of the organization and the trajectory, everything's peachy. So
yeah, for sure. I think that sequencing matters. It matters on the, do you want to walk? If you get a walk and a double, you'd rather have the walk first. And just it's the same thing. Last year they got the double, and this year they're walking. Instead of having a run in and a runner on second, they've got runners on first and second. And it's just sequencing has hurt them a little bit in this regard when it comes to perception. But I really think it's important just to recognize that being upset about this type of season, we would have been doing backflips if they did this 2 years ago.
For sure. That's David Leske of Inside the Crown. Go subscribe to his blog there on Substack, or you can, of course, just do it online or get it in the newsletter. And you can also catch him on his podcast or on Petro's podcast, Kaufman Corner, with Les Norman on Thursdays. David, great stuff, man. Thanks for sticking around. We'll have you back on when there's probably just a couple weeks left to go in the season, and we'll see how right we were today. That's David Leske on the Calling It How I See It Sports Podcast.